the U.S. diplomacy needs to know that the minute they turn their back to South America, that is going to be the new Africa, and Russia and China will take over, period.
Brazil is like visiting an alternative universe. This is The Rip Current. I'm Jake Ward. We look at the big invisible forces moving on us every day. And I recently took a trip to Brazil, my first, and I can't claim to have been anything more than a tourist. But I happened to be there at the time that the former President Jair Bolsonaro was going to trial for a thing that here in the United States will sound familiar, inciting an insurrection to overthrow the government. And I didn't know it at the time, but not only was he going to trial for it, he would go on to be convicted. The guy has been found guilty. And between that and all of the incredible geopolitical machinations I saw at work in Brazil at that time, the fact that China was clearly preparing to be Brazil's big customer when it came to the soybeans that suddenly the United States was not going to be providing because of the tariffs we were imposing, and the world of surveillance technology that China has installed across Rio, the sort of cultural capital of the country. Man, I mean, just that place was absolutely fascinating. So ever since I've been looking for someone to help me decode what it was. And one of the things I was trying to do while I was there was speak to a fact-checking organization that I'd held in very high regard for a long time called Lupa. And I tried to get in touch with them. I just couldn't get through. And I discovered only later that its founder, Cristina Tardaguila, actually lives here in the United States. She had to escape Brazil because of the danger of the work she had been doing trying to expose misinformation around COVID and around Jair Bolsonaro's presidency. I finally did get through to her, and she agreed to this hour-long conversation, and it was, I would say, one of the most rewarding that I have had. I found this an absolutely fascinating discussion, and I hope you enjoy this tour of Brazil thanks to Cristina Tardaguila. Tell us a little bit about Lupa. What is it? Why did you create it? What do you seek to accomplish with it?
Hey, Jacob, first of all, thank you so much for your interest in Brazil. I mean, the fact that somebody really has been there, has seen what's being done there, it's just very, very, it feels very warm and it relates to my life. I'm based in DC, as I told you. And I do feel that we're in different planets, but there are some similarities we might address today. Well, Lupa is a fact-checking organization. It was born in 2015 out of the feeling that disinformation would be something important. We're talking about 1 year before Trump's first government was first elected, and about a time that nobody actually knew what quote fake news were. So we are kind of like a vanguard of that kind of battle. At that time in Brazil, we did not have the far right and the far left. We had just the right and the left. And we felt at that time that polarization was already taking place and that fact-checking was needed. In the last 10 years...
Can I just ask?
Sure.
Do you remember at that time, was there a particular story, a particular piece of misinformation? I mean, this is pre-COVID, this is pre-so many things. Like, what was the misinformation that you were seeing in 2015 that had you worried enough to start an organization?
Well, that we're talking especially about the 2014 presidential election between Dilma Rousseff and Aécio Neves. She being the person from the Workers' Party, which is Lula's party, the left, and Aécio Neves being from the right party, the PSDB party. And at that time, we were more worried about regular life discussions, education, security. Security was always a big topic in Brazil. We are also worried about energy, and a little bit about climate change and the Amazon and all that. And yeah, it was. I kind of missed that time when we were actually discussing things that were very important.
Right. What an innocent time, only talking about climate change. That's right.
Right. I mean, the main concerns for fact checkers at that time were actually to spot if Dilma or Aécio were misusing numbers or misusing, things out of context. I mean, that was the main goal. So we wanted to make sure people would vote knowing that they were trying to manipulate that topic here and there. So yeah, that was a different time, a different universe.
Yeah, a very different universe. And so then Trump comes along with this new strategy, and so it's interesting. I was in a fellowship at Stanford University in 2018, and one of my other fellows was a guy named Bart Bonakowski, who I've had on the podcast as a guest, and he at one point he was talking about the rise of populism is what he studies, and he showed a slide of all of these different populist presidential candidates. It was like, here's Trump, here's Le Pen, here's Boris Johnson. And at the end of the presentation, I said to him, wow, man, what a cool slide. That hair slide is crazy. And he was like, what do you mean hair slide? And I was like, the slide where they all have the same haircut. And it was true. They all have the same like blonde flip or blonde thing for Boris or whatever. And it led me to this question with him, which is, did we see people at that time communicating and coordinating? Because that's what it looked like, because they all suddenly adopted the same messages and the same strategies of being just openly dishonest, that it didn't, you're talking about an era where you're just like,
right,
where they're like misusing numbers, right?
Yeah.
Or misquoting stats. But here where Trump comes along and suddenly is just making stuff up, and suddenly everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And at the time, it felt like they were coordinated. But his theory, and I wonder if you agree with this, was just that they saw that it was working.
Exactly. I agree.
Right. And they began to mimic each other because of that. Not there wasn't some grand, table they all sat around, but just a mimicry was happening. And is that what happened in Brazil?
Yeah. I mean, you saw Jair Bolsonaro, former president, just noticed that kind of communication worked, right? He had been a congressman for 30 years before running for presidency, and the person who actually made Jair Bolsonaro extremely successful in terms of communication in a Trump, Orban, Nicolas Maduro style, which we kind of can go back to that Techno-Populism, which is a term that comes from The Engineers of Chaos. It's a very good book by an Italian author whose name I cannot remember now. But the person behind Jair Bolsonaro was actually his son, who were extremely savvy in the online planet. And they probably saw what Trump was doing, what Steve Bannon was doing, what was being done, by populists, techno-populists elsewhere. So there is a sort of a mastermind behind the rise of Bolsonaro. And at one point in the history of Brazil, we called it the hate cabinet. I'm not sure if you've heard that expression before. There was a point. No. So the hate cabinet it's actually under investigation. It's a group of people who were very close to Jair Bolsonaro, who managed to very vastly understand what algorithms do and how you can use them in your favor, and that the more emotional reactions you get, the more people engage. So, and they started playing with that. So, I mean, they learned from each other, but also, Jacob, I think we're talking like back in maybe 17, 18, but from that point on, and I think that's what's currently happening right now, they're pretty connected. Now we know that for sure there are communications going between Javier Milei and Bolsonaro and Trump and Orban, and we know these people meet. So Bolsonaro
goes to Mar-a-Lago and spends time with Trump as a guest and a friend, right?
And his son Eduardo, he's now here. He's been here in the U.S. For a while now, and he's the mastermind behind the incredible tariffs that are being charged against Brazilian imports. So yeah, he's the.
I didn't know that. So I knew that there was some sense. The vibe you get just reading the headlines, and again, I just haven't looked into this deeply. Is that Trump feels kinship with Bolsonaro, and so imposed these tariffs for that reason? I didn't understand that Eduardo, Bolsonaro's son, was involved. That's interesting.
And he talks about that openly. If you go to his social media accounts, he has bazillions of videos praising himself for having met whoever in the Commerce Chamber or whoever in the Defense Department or the State Department, and actually have pushed the terrorists to go as up as 50%.
Wow.
Very dark influence.
So as you see, so as you go from a world in which you're just hoping that Dilma Rousseff, quotes some agricultural statistics accurately, to a world in which you have Bolsonaro and his people emulating the Trump playbook and just making stuff up. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the role of Lupa then, right? Do you and tell me a little bit about the model, right? You are offering these services. It's not just sort of something. It's not just a website people visit, right? You're offering a service. Tell me a little bit about how that worked and how your work must have intensified during that period.
Yeah, Lupa started, as I said, in 2015. We were 4 people who dropped out of newsrooms. We were tired of, doing old school journalism and thought that fact checking would be something interesting. And we were 4. Now we're 35. We started as let's call it a newswire service, very tiny one. We would replicate the style that Americans know as Associated Press does or Reuters. We would offer fact check articles to media outlets that did not have their own fact checkers, and they just were getting hundreds of information every day, and they just couldn't separate what was fiction from facts, right? So that was our first business model. We did that for a while, and then we suddenly moved. We opened a new branch, which was education. Then we noticed that, whatever we were doing was getting a lot of attention, and that we needed more people, and we just couldn't find journalists that were ready to do what we did. So we opened an entire branch for educating people in media literacy and OSINT investigations and all that's needed to do fact checking. So that is our second, pillar in business model. And then the third one, which is brand new, we started now with an intelligence branch. We're actually moving away from journalism and moving further into investigating and researching to find deeper understanding, how this information spreads and who are the voices behind it. So we have at least 3 big products that are on the market. But that's the story of Lupa in a very brief description.
And were you so as Bolsonaro, he comes to power in 2019, gets elected in 2019, then
in 18, Jacob.
In 18, thank you. Sorry, in 18.
Yeah, he takes office in 19.
Takes office in 18, and then of course he's in office when COVID hits, which was disastrous for Brazil. Yeah. And as I understand it, you helped to then organize a multi-country effort to fight disinformation at that time. Tell us a little bit about that. What was it like in Brazil? And how was misinformation dangerous there in COVID in a new way for you?
So when COVID hit, Jacob, I was already living in the U.S. For a very sad reason. In 2018, during the presidential campaign, we were 15 people in Lupa. 6 of them were receiving death threats, me included. So the International Fact-Checking Network, which is the organization that brings together professional fact-checkers around the planet, offered me a position in their office in Tampa, actually in St. Pete, in Florida. So I moved and I became the associate director of the IFCN.
You had to take those threats seriously enough that you had to leave the country.
Yeah. Which I'm kind of ashamed because I left and my team was there. So that's something that I kind of regret, but it's life and it's what I did. And I can only ask for excuses from my teammates. That wasn't the best as a leader.
But you also can't do the job if you are injured or being terrorized. That's not a plausible way of functioning.
And then at the IFCN, as a associate director there, COVID hit. And then it was early January 2020 And the Asian friends started messaging us saying, we're seeing this weird information. Is anyone else in the planet getting that? I mean, people are getting sick. So, that movement. And suddenly we realized that we needed a spreadsheet, a very basic spreadsheet where all fact checkers could add the fact checks they had done about that virus that we did not know what it was, so we could be faster. We could know, well, this has been done in Taiwan. Well, this has been done in Japan. This has been done in India. So we can be faster, right? We wouldn't. So by starting pretty small in a simple spreadsheet in 2 years, we started calling it the Coronavirus Facts Alliance. It was a project that lasts for 2 years. It brought together 99 fact-checking organizations around the planet, 46 languages, and we have a database of 17,000 fact checks done throughout these 2 years of COVID. And this is the project I'm most proud of in my entire life, even though I have Lupa, which I love. But that took the IFCN to be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2021. We lost for Maria Ressa, very, very deserved.
That's pretty good. I don't know. Nominated is pretty good. That seems all right.
Yeah. But
sure.
I mean, that was the biggest, I think it is still the biggest collaboration among fact checkers. And it's the biggest work done against a disinformation wave. And it's available for anyone to reach. The database is open to anyone.
When we come back, we're going to talk with Cristina about the why of disinformation, why all of these lies began to spread. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. You have spent so much of your career looking at misinformation, at people who specifically seek to misinform the public. And I wonder if you want to just talk a little bit about the why of it, right? So it was, for me, very strange to watch our President Trump at the time of COVID, pushing bad and, conspiratorial thinking, bad medical advice. And I was trying to explain to my daughter the other day, and the best I could come up with was just this idea that it was just, it just was a way for him to solidify loyalty from a certain part of his, political supporters. That it didn't really have to do with what he believed as much as it had to do with just what was politically helpful. And I wonder, just for you, when you've written, you wrote a whole book, Tempestade Perfetta, on this subject. Like, why is there all of this misinformation? Is it truly, especially in the context of COVID, was it because somebody like Bolsonaro truly believed you couldn't catch it and you could just exercise your way out of it the way he said? Or was it for some other reason? Why do people misinform us in that way?
I think that there are several answers to that, and I'm going to try to be truthful to the data that we've collected, right? So there are reasons. There are very basic reasons for disinforming. First of all, this is a job. This is a job for bazillions of people, Jacob. Like, think about the Macedonian guys back in 2016, pushing disinformation against Hillary Clinton. That was a job. We're talking about unemployment. So that plays a very big role in countries like mine, where kids easily learn how to influence the algorithm and how to segment a message, and they get paid to do so. That's a business. That's an industry.
Paid in your case, paid by who?
By there are very good, amazing journalists who work in Latin America about communication agencies, like marketing for politicians. Those marketeers, they know that this isn't beautiful, but they do it. Like, there is a very good series that's called Los Desinformantes, which tracks how communication agencies in Latin America are hiring in another country, also in Latin America, to influence an election in a third or fourth country. So the language isn't a problem. They all speak Spanish. So, I mean, it is a job, first of all, Jacob. We honestly have to drop the I mean, we have to stop characterizing disinformation as something that is related to just ethics and moral. No, this is business. This is an industry. And I even keep saying it, my friends who are still running newspapers, like saying, you need to put this information in the economy section and stop, reporting it on the political section. This is economy, right? This is a different universe. And the more we move towards scams and disinformation, which is a topic we can talk forever here, the more economical this is going to be. So first why is it is a way of living. People make money out of it, right? The second is because we have done a few researches that lately here in the U.S., even with Latinos in the U.S., that we detected that people know something is wrong, but they actually spread that because they want to belong. So we're talking about a psychology side of it, right? We're in a planet that seems like everybody's connected, but there's lots of anxiety, depression, all the psychological problems. That belonging is extremely, extremely important. So people are very happy to share that the earth is flat if that makes them belong to a group where everybody else believes the earth is flat. So, that's a second reason. And the third reason is it's kind of in between here. It's my ideology and my taste and my love, you can never talk badly about the Beatles with me. I will use every single argument to kill you.
That's your tribe.
Right? That's my tribe. So don't attack my universe, the one I love. And I'm ready here to destroy the opposite. So that has become the rule. So I'd say there are three big whys: money, right? Ideology, and also belonging, which is a psychological spectrum of the story.
And so, at Lupa and with this fact-checking alliance that you created around coronavirus, was there a consistent tactic? I mean, is the job simply to just keep spotting falsehoods and correct them in the public record, or does it somehow have to go deeper than that? What was your playbook for choosing, the misinformation that you felt needed to be corrected, and then the best tactics that you came up with for actually seeing some change in the public understanding of that piece of misinformation?
Well, thank you for that question, Jacob, because I think it's sometimes it feels like fact checking is such a node journalism tool, but it's actually it needs more explanation, right? So fact checkers, we do have, first of all, we are a human science. We're not, you're not math. It's not, physics. So it's still a human-based science, and there will always be room for mistakes and adjustments forever. But we do have and fact checkers around the International Fact-Checking Network, the IFCN. We do have a very strict code of ethics and principles, which means we all have very clear methodologies on what we're going to fact check and why that and not the other one, when and how we are going to post a correction, and if we did any mistake. We will try very hard to be unbiased, apolitical, and we will be as transparent as we can about our sources, which means we do not go off the record or fact-checking anything. And we will be 100% transparent about our funds. So that puts fact-checking in a very easy to fact-check situation. So you can fact-check any fact-check, right? Or you can fact-check any fact-checker, because they are very open and clear about how they do things and how they correct themselves and who pays the bills and so forth. So going back to the COVID, what we did is we brought together 99 organizations that had that were part of the IFCN and had their methodologies certified. And that certification, just to be clear, it is an annual process that runs independently from any fact-checking organizations. It's in-country, independent assessors based. So we knew that the quality of the content that we were bringing together would be very high, and it is, and it was. So that's one thing. I mean, if you can, and just going back to Brazil, Brazil, there are if I'm not mistaken, 8 IFCN members now. And well, the operations are completely separate, but if you see that 8 of them have published an article saying that politician A said something false, that is pretty consistent, right? 8 organizations that do not operate together, that do not know each other very well. They come up with a verdict about a claim. Well, the odds of that claim being false is extremely high. So that was the idea behind the COVID, and is the idea behind any election.
It's a nice idea, right? It's very much the scientific method, right? If you can have independent research teams reach the same conclusion with the same data, then you can feel good about that. That's how you reach scientific consensus. That's very interesting.
And that's
so
why,
then
that's one of the reasons, Jacob, just very briefly, that's why I keep saying that there is no competition among fact checkers. Fact checkers love when another fact checker comes up with the same thing or a different thing, because, we grow together. We develop our credibility together. So that's just a quick comment there.
Ooh, I like that. I wish that were more the case in the sort of in the journalism world more broadly, right? Because unfortunately, the breaking of a story, the wanting to be first to the story, means people are always, at the big networks, or negotiating an exclusive. This conversation that you'll have with me is going to be only on our air, right? Is a big thing. But what you're describing makes me realize, right, that actually hurts the credibility of that report. It would be much more credible if everybody carried that interview. That is really an interesting.
And at the end of the day, if you think, like, we know each fact checking organization or each fact checkers, we know that we will not be able to fight disinformation alone at all. If we don't work together, and we don't collaborate, and if we don't share, and if we don't help each other, well, we lose. We all lose, but our readers and our audiences, they lose too. So by working together and collaborating, then we are actually achieving the biggest goal, which is, stretching a little bit disinformation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So thinking about what it is to be overwhelmed, give us a sense for anyone who wasn't part, who paid no attention to Brazilian politics and no attention to the way that the Brazilian media covered politics. Give us some sense of Bolsonaro and what he was like, how he was a departure from the past.
So Bolsonaro was, when he decided to run for president, and it was in 2017. He had been a congressman for about 30 years. He's a man born and raised in the southeast of Brazil. He is very, very close to the police forces. He's very pro-guns. He used to have like a very a conversation that would be very close to the evangelical religious people. He has been in the army. He has been a captain in the army. So we're talking about a man that has conservative perspective. And well, what he did is he fed that kind of voters, right? People usually think that Brazil is very liberal, very open, and very carnival, and very bikini, right? Not really. The real Brazil is extremely religious. It's either Catholics or evangelicals, right? It's really family centered. So the conversation that you Americans know, like family comes first, let's protect the family, that became a very big hit. So in 2018, Bolsonaro was elected with the promises of increasing security, protecting the family, and ending corruption. Just a quick observation here. Dilma Rousseff was impeached, and Lula, before her, had been investigated for a very big corruption case. And there were some corruption situations and in the past of the Workers' Party in Brazil. So when Bolsonaro came up with that, I'm anti-corrupt and in favor of guns, and I'm gonna do increase your security. That hit very well, right? And it's quite interesting, Jacob, because I'm gonna jump a lot in time here. And while I'm just speaking, I'm talking loud here. I'm thinking like, oh my God, that's exactly what Bukele is doing right now in El Salvador. There are you can see that, how fast, and it's exactly what Milei is doing in Argentina, the anti-corruption conversation, and Bukele is the pro-security conversation. And it's so interesting to see that the meta narratives are always the same.
That's right. I mean, and you look at the past. I mean, you look at I've spent some time looking at Portugal's time under Salazar, and the message that he gave people in the 1920s was, I'm going to take power away from the corrupt elites and bring it back to all of you. The fighting of corruption and improving your life by giving you back the power that's the essence of the populist pitch, right? And it really works. It's a good sales pitch. Yeah,
exactly.
So it worked for him. It worked for Bolsonaro.
It worked for him. He was elected pretty close, but he was elected. And very early in his first year, the COVID came, right? And I think he was not lucky at all, because he picked the anti-vax side, and he pushed that the lockdown was unnecessary. He wanted people to go out and keep working, the schools to be open. And that was my surprise, Jacob, to be honest, because Brazil loves vaccine. Like we have this, I'm 45. So there's this character. It's from when you're a kid and you have to take vaccines. You have Zé Gotinha, which is Joseph the Drop. Let's just translate it this way. It's a very known character that everybody loved, Joseph the Drop, because
wow, I don't know. I didn't know anything about that. That's fascinating.
Oh yeah,
really,
it's fascinating. Everybody, it was a major vaccination campaign. Brazil is actually known and internationally awarded by its vaccines system. It's extremely good and well. And then, when Bolsonaro took the anti-vax side, that wasn't great, because people just love Joseph the Drop, right? So we will be taking COVID shots, and of course, the anti-vax community went up, yes. But we had 700,000 deaths. And that's a lot. We're talking a lot about, right? And I think that backfired for him. And so we're talking about the 2020 election, and then Lula was already in place, because that's something I didn't mention before. So Lula was trialed and was considered guilty. And was arrested. And that's the reason why he could not run in 2018. And some people believe that if he had done so, Bolsonaro had never won. But since Lula wasn't a candidate in 2018, then the left lost and Bolsonaro won. But for a million reasons, there is super complicated to explain here, even in English, Jacob, is Lula is no longer... Lula was freed and is no longer considered guilty. They kind of annihilated the entire process around what's going on with Lula, and Lula is back in the game in 2022, and then the Bolsonaro runs for re-election, but Lula is huge. I mean, he has a bunch of problems. Also, he also knows how to play the media and how to play the information. He's not naive at all, but he's a big name, right? So he won. And then we had our Capitol storm on January 8th, 2023. So, yeah, but much bigger. And I think, I'd probably say better planned, much bigger than the storm in the Capitol in the United States.
When we come back, we're going to talk about January 8th, 2023 and the fallout from that insurrection. Stay with us. January 8th, 2023, where are you that day?
I'm in D.C.
in DC. You're watching that happen from here.
It was,
And
it was a Sunday. I
and
wasn't working.
what do you remember your reaction being? Did it come as a shock to you, or did you have any
Yeah.
signs that this might be coming?
No, this was, I actually was desperate, Jacob, because just so our listeners understand, election in Brazil is usually the first round is in early October, last round in early November, the most. So, and our voting machine, they're electronic, very reliable, extremely reliable. They've been used since 1996, and no cases of fraud, and that allows us to know the results of the election the same night. So it's extremely fast. So we're talking about early November. We knew Lula had won, and as fact checkers, we kind of like turn off our tools. Like, okay, election.
We can relax.
Yeah,
we can relax. Right. That story is over.
Exactly. At least until the day that you have to take the what's that name?
The swearing in.
The swearing in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is usually January the 1st. And journalists hate that because you have to work anyway. But yeah. So
right. I know. Journalists, we're always saying, sorry, kids, I'll see you next year.
Yeah.
Right.
So we kind of took a break, like November, December, right? And we were getting ready for January the 1st for the swearing in. And fine. There were some people camping out in Brasilia. There was some people camping in Sao Paulo. There were some conversations about, what is the military going to do? And because the camps were in front of the HQs of some military forces, and we're like, okay, let's just track this, but it doesn't seem like that very consistent. And well, Lula, crawled the ramp of Palácio do Planalto. Everything was fine, no major problems, nothing like fine. And then that's January 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Well, everything is fine, right? And then that Sunday, you wake up, you're like, what? Where did it come?
Thousands of people storm the presidential palace, the Congress, the Supreme Court, vandalize it. Yeah. A huge attack on the Capitol.
Yeah, they attacked 3 buildings. They attacked the Supreme Court, they attacked the Congress, and they attacked the Executive Palace, which is just thinking about if it's D.C., Supreme Court, Capitol Hill, and White House. Just imagine that. That's gigantic, right?
Not just Congress the way they did.
Not exactly.
But all 3 of those, right?
At the same time.
Right. So clearly a coordinated, planned effort, not just a riot, a protest that got out of control, but an actual coordinated event.
And the first thought I had is like, how we did not see this coming. That's when you feel horrible. And then we realized very soon that we had missed a coordinating effort, but they were using different terms. Very briefly in Portuguese, selva, S-E-L-V-A, means forest. Yeah. And it's also a name that military power uses. So they define themselves as forest. And if we were tracking selva in our tools, our fact-checking tools, our monitoring tools, that word was there, but we did not see it because they were using Selma, S-E-L-M-A, which is the name of a woman. And they were saying, let's go to Selma's party. And that was the code the organizers used to actually rent buses from all over the country, get food paid to drive to be delivered in Brasilia, and to pay for everything they needed. So we were like, oh my God, this is another level of coordination, right? And yeah, they stormed the place, and you see that the TV is live. And they were very smart, Jacob, because if I'm not mistaken, January 6th was a Thursday, right, in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. Right. But January 8th was a Sunday. So Sundays, I mean, you have less police officers in the building. You have less businessmen. You have the congressmen are not there.
Right.
So it's easier to take the building, right? And that's my second thought. I'm like, they are going to be successful, because we know January 6th wasn't successful because the senators and, the
Right,
congressmen
everything's fully
worked.
staffed.
Yeah, they were fully
that's interesting.
staffed. And we knew
Wow.
that, right? And then my third thought was,
So a very clear sense on your part that not only was this coordinated, but some lessons had been learned from watching January
exactly,
6th in the United States. Huh.
exactly, Jacob. There is no doubt, and there's no doubt they learned when and the how, right? And that, just a very brief comparison that can be a metaphor. Like, we did not see Bolsonaro saying go there as we saw Trump kind of saying, let's walk down there, right? Let's walk to the Capitol. Like,
Right. It's
there's
going to
a
be
quote.
wild.
Yeah,
Right.
there's a quote from Trump. I can't say it precisely right now,
Right. But he suggested, let's go.
he suggested, let's go. Bolsonaro was in the U.S. He was away. He cannot be blamed, right? But and the smart coordination was being done through WhatsApp channels mainly, which is the biggest communication app in Brazil, right? It's owned by Meta and it's encrypted. So it's pretty difficult to track. I mean, they learned a lot. They knew that the Sunday was a better day. They knew that the head of whatever the power, in this case, Bolsonaro, could not appear, right? They knew that they needed more people. They knew that they need to attack more than one building. They knew exactly that there wasn't what was the best time to start things. Yeah, clearly, or very organized.
A truly upgraded January 6th. Wow.
Yeah.
So then now, fast forwarding, we're in a position where suddenly now Bolsonaro has been convicted of insurrection, which as an American is such a, as someone who observed the events of January 6th, the clear culpability of President Trump in being on site and saying, let's go do this thing. And yet, of course, he's now president again and seems that he will never be punished for that. It is amazing to watch the Supreme Court of Brazil convict this guy, right? The first president, I believe, in Brazil's history ever convicted of this, right? And I guess I wonder, how do you account for that? And how do you account for that being possible in a country where, at the same time, you had seen so much misinformation, so many conspiracy theories, so much far-right activism happening, and yet here we are, where he actually stood trial and was convicted. How do you account for that?
First, I would say that it's kind of flattering to imagine that maybe Brazilian democracy is stronger than the American. It's kind of funny to think that way. I mean, wow.
Why is that funny? Why do you consider that funny?
Oh, come on. We're a Latin American country. We're treated like garbage. I mean, it's a historical perspective. Like, who would say that in America, like you, a U.S. citizen would say that? I mean, it's like mind blowing for me.
Right.
U.S. is known as the biggest democracy on the planet, but wait a minute. There's a U.S. citizen asking me about democracy in Brazil. Like, wow, that's pretty good, pretty flattering. But things aren't that simple.
Right. Sure.
Jacob, Brazil is such a complicated country. And I have to say that even though I'm pretty satisfied with the end of the trial, I think the trial was fair. I think the team, Bolsonaro and other 7 people were all considered guilty, and they have now the time in jail. Even though that feels like the justice has been made, the process was not perfect. And very briefly, if I can, there is a person, it's one justice, it's called Alexandre de Moraes, a bald guy, very young.
I was just going to say, the bald guy.
Bald guy,
right. When he's not wearing a cowboy hat, the bald guy. Right.
Alexandre de Moraes is a very controversial justice. He's extremely tough, like maybe way too tough. And he was the president of the Superior Electoral Court, which is something that only Brazil has, I understand. It's a branch of the judiciary system that only deals with election. That's all it's made for. So he was the head of this entity during the election, the last election, and during the attacks. So, and he's also justice, one of the justice at the Supreme Court. So he has two big roles in the story, right? So he has, as a Supreme Court president, he had lots of power. Like he took down content. Like he enforced like so many things that he thought was right.
He's the one who banned Twitter and threatened Elon Musk with huge sanctions. That's
exactly.
Right.
That's the guy. Mm-hmm. That's the guy. And now he personally is being sanctioned with the Magnitsky Law. I'm not sure if your audience knows that.
In the U.S., the same law used to sanction Putin,
Gaddafi,
and oligarchs, and Gaddafi is being aimed at a Supreme Court justice in Brazil. That's right.
Exactly. Right. Well, so he is a very controversial man. He is, I'd say, he's a big sheriff, like too tough, right? And no concessions at all, which is sometimes considered he's crossing a few lines. And those questions are extremely valid, right? You cannot have one man deciding what stays on Twitter, right? In an entire country. So for some Brazilians, they say, I'm so glad he was there. If we're here today, it's because he was there and he took that risk. But some other part of the country says, this is so wrong. We opened this door and we will never be able to close it because this man now is extremely powerful. So there are two. So yeah, basically going back to the trial is that the end seems to be well accepted by the Brazilian population, the majority of the Brazilian population. There are some polls indicating that, but the process has some questionable moments, which makes things a little bit gray.
The gray future of Brazil. We're going to get deeper into that when we come back. Stay with us. I was talking to somebody the other day, a Brazilian, about my feelings about how extraordinary it is that Bolsonaro stood trial and was convicted, and that person said, yeah, but it's Brazil. Things can change real quick, anytime. And the point that this person was making to me was that congressional elections, Bolsonaro's son may be running, all sorts of things could undo this moment, and that it may not be as sort of as permanent a shining victory as for democracy as one might think. What's your feeling about it?
Agree.
Do you worry that this could be? You agree this could be undone?
Agree. Yeah. I mean, just if you go back in time, in 2018, Lula was the one arrested, was the one in jail.
He's president now,
and he's president now. So poof. Yeah, story can repeat itself. But basically, for our audience, just so they understand, so next year is 2026. There will be presidential election again. We know that at this moment, Bolsonaro cannot run because he has been considered guilty. And differently from the U.S., if a person is convicted in Brazil, you cannot run from office, which is something very smart that we created. It's called the clean record law, in a very weird term.
You have to have a clean record to run.
Yes. You cannot take office if your records are not clean. So
that seems right. Difference. That seems reasonable to me. Yeah.
And for us Brazilians are like, how can they elect a president that has been convicted? It's for us, it's like mind blowing, honestly.
Wow.
But it's the U.S. and you do whatever you want. But going back, so besides the presidential election, Lula will probably run for his fourth mandate, and we do not know yet who might be the rightest candidate, right? But at the same moment, we will have election for Senate and for other positions, right? And two things can happen there. First, if Lula loses, whoever wins will have the opportunity to pick 3 new justices for the Supreme Court.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, like 3 of the current members are retiring, getting old. But now they're leaving the house. They're leaving the court. So there will be a big change. Brazil has 11 justices and 3 will be changed very soon. So if we have a right winger in the palace executive branch, then probably the Supreme Court will move towards a lot more towards the right. And we know that Bolsonaro will appeal and we go back forever and ever. And that can be undone. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the Senate election that is almost for sure, Jacob, that we will have a more conservative Congress. We're moving towards more conservative Congress every election in a row. So the Senate will be extremely conservative, matching what today the House is. So today in Brazil, the House is extremely Bolsonarist and the Senate is more central. But if both houses fall into the right, then for example, there is one thing that could take place is that they can impeach Alexandre de Moraes, which is very awkward for an American. But in Brazil, you can impeach a justice.
A Supreme Court justice. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And could those conservative new elected officials also do an annulment like they did for Lula?
Yeah. And there's a third option. So one of the names being considered for as the rightist candidate is the current governor of São Paulo, Tarcísio de Freitas. And he has already said on TV that the minute he is elected, he's going to give Bolsonaro amnesty. So it's almost like a campaign promise.
Wow. We will erase this thing. And that will be our campaign promise. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So there are 3 ways at least that things can go the other way around in a minute.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Well, I still have great admiration for this moment in Brazil's history, even if when you and I talk in a year, it may feel very different. Okay.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I just want to ask a little bit about a couple of things that I've observed in Brazil recently, a little bit off the topic that we've been on. And one is when I was in so for a long time, I've reported on technology. And one of the things I've reported on a lot is China's efforts to try to move into other countries in terms of exporting their surveillance technology to other countries. They call it the Smart Cities Program. I think that it's now called the Safe Cities Program. But Quito, Ecuador, Lima, Peru, Karachi, Pakistan, they buy these big all-in sort of surveillance systems. And when I was in Rio, I noticed that those systems are in place all over that city, that there's, when I come into the airport and I walk through passport control, I don't talk to anybody. They just take my picture and take my picture and take my picture. And then I go, you just walk straight down this hall and your photograph is being taken. And then that's it. And I just wondered if you could sort of give us some sense of that bargain, I guess, that has been struck somehow in Brazil between being willing to be surveilled all the time and presumably some trade-off when it comes to safety, because Brazil has had a big violent crime problem like the United States has for a long time. We here in the U.S. are also grappling with this surveillance versus privacy question. But Brazil seems to have sort of made a decision about it in a way that I don't recognize. And I just wonder what your perspective is on that. I've been looking for somebody to talk to me about this.
So I think the biggest why is, and it's quite important to be able to say this here, is this is the room the U.S. is leaving behind. So the U.S. diplomacy needs to know that the minute they turn their back to South America, that is going to be the new Africa, and Russia and China will take over, period. So, and just so you know, I've been extremely obsessed with that topic. I mean, I've been tracking FIMI, right? Foreign influencer operations in Brazil from Russia and China, and they're going very, very high. So that's one thing that U.S. audience needs to know. If your executive decides to, not be there, Chinese and Russians will be there. We'll take your spot. That's
even as a tourist, right, who was in Rio for just a week, I see I see these Chinese surveillance systems everywhere.
Yeah.
I see, as you're standing on Copacabana Beach, you see the ships going by full of grain and fuel and all sorts of things, clearly going to these new deep water ports that China
Yeah.
has helped to build. And I just thought, there's some American stuff. People are wearing Nikes and some American music is on the radio, but I didn't see, nobody's speaking English. Like nobody seems to care about that. And I just thought to myself, this is a country that doesn't need us at all. I just remember looking around just thinking that we are not involved in this country, as far as I can tell.
If you think, what was Lula's current president reaction the minute Trump increased the tariffs? It's okay. We will talk to China. That's his first move. And that's it. Like China positions itself in Brazil as the economic relief that Brazilians need. We're talking about Chinese entering big time, Jacob, big time in media. China is, the other day, just so you know, there was one of the major newspapers in Brazil. They had one big full page article on Xi Jinping, the man of culture. That was the headline.
A puff piece about Xi Jinping. Wow.
Amazing big picture. No, like we love Xi Jinping, the man of culture, and not a single line about Ai Weiwei and all the things that he has suffered as an artist in China, and nothing like that. So it's very China brings so much money to a country that's still extremely poor, and is so eager to deploy, and that amount of money in Brazil. It's so difficult to say no if you do not have a American solution, right? I mean, it's either pay the bills or pay the bills. You don't have a choice. So to the surveillance topic, I agree with you. I think you have to see like BYD, the cars in Brazil, like BYD is a Chinese brand.
I saw those everywhere. That was an amazing thing. Every Uber we took was someone rolling up in a Chinese-made electric luxury car made by typically BYD or another. That's right.
BYD cars are extremely affordable right now. I mean, it used to be Volkswagen, it used to be a Fiat, but no longer, right? So it's not the West brands anymore. If you go to a phone shop, they're going to offer you Huawei. I don't even know how to say that.
Huawei and these other makers. And, Huawei, right.
A third of the price of a Samsung or at Apple, the iPhones, they're unimaginable. You cannot afford. So the Chinese solution is the economic relief. If you take a look at the connections between China and the rural part of Brazil, which we're talking about the in-country part, we're talking about the agriculture, massive. We're talking about not only equipment being sold to increase the productions of soy. Brazil is a big soy product, right? So and something else that I think is quite interesting, China until I think mid 2010, they used to deny climate change. Right? They had this thing saying, well, they were big, carbon producers. They were, of course, anti any change in their energy system, and they were deniers of climate change until a moment that they flipped the conversation and they understood that being green, being pro-green, is much more interesting in economical terms. So that matches with Brazil like that. We have to protect the Amazon, right? So, and Chinese are now building air conditioners that are greener than those from American companies. So we will buy Chinese. It's cheaper and they're greener, right? So China has, it's like we say in Portuguese, it's the hunger and the need to eat. They just a perfect match.
How do you say that? So will you say that in Portuguese for us?
É a fome e a vontade de comer. Is the hunger and the will to eat. I mean, perfect match, right? So yeah, I mean, they are there and they're going to expand brutally.
Right. This relationship is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper over time. And as we watch It's amazing to me that we are going to watch that country go through so much more complicated political times, and we will have so much less influence in that nation
Agree.
While that happens.
One funny thing, Jacob, maybe that's a good way to end. The NFL is in Brazil right now, so maybe that's
it. You get our football. Yeah, we can't do anything else for you. No air conditioners, no military support, big tariffs, but you can have some football. Enjoy.
Yeah, NFL landed in Sao Paulo a few weeks ago, and it was a big hit. So hey, maybe through soft power,
that and Lady Gaga, and that's all you get.
There you go.
Cristina Tardaguila, thank you so much for this fascinating tour of your nation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob. Anytime I'm here.
The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it and like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.